us about that.
So I'm Anne Gottshall. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Reveler, and Reveler is a smart reverse marketplace for event venues and vendors. So what does that mean? People planning events can essentially come to the platform. They fill out an extensive questionnaire about their event requirements and needs, and then our intelligent technology provides custom recommendations for venues and vendors, which then compete for the business. So unlike traditional listing sites, I'm sure many of you are familiar with them, where the onus rests on the person planning the event to then individually call or message a bunch of venues, we sort of do the heavy lifting for them, and the venues sort of reverses it, whereas so the venues compete for the business and reach out to the user. Before that, I worked in finance and planned a number of corporate events, and that was the genesis of this idea.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And Jeff, winning wit. What is winning wit?
Yeah, I think just based on our experience, at least with our platform, it seems that increasingly, we certainly have experienced event planners using our site and using our product, but increasingly we're seeing people that are in marketing positions or PR or even financial analysts that are tasked with sourcing event venues and vendors and planning the events and executing on the events. So we've certainly seen that in the tech industry, which seems to be our core demographic of users. So these are smaller companies, people that obviously maybe don't have the funds of a large public company, but they're still throwing a lot of money at events because they understand the ROI that comes from them of this in-person event experience. But a lot of times, because by virtue of the fact that these are smaller companies or whatnot, we're finding people that are sort of sitting non-traditional event roles being the decision maker on these events.
Do you see some of the people who are representing larger budgets still using your platform?
Yeah, definitely. That's been actually a surprise for us. I think our thesis going into this was that our target user would probably be someone who was on the lower end budget-wise. But just because they're a private tech company or maybe they only have 30 employees, it depends on a little bit on the sector, I'd say. But we've had people with 60-person event with a $50,000 budget, or events for 1,200 people have used our platform. So
in the way that Jacqueline was talking about as well.
Shorter lead times, I would say, seems to be a common trend, but I'd add to that I think response time is key. So that's been, whether it's a trend or just the way the market is going, that's been surprising to me because even if, let's say, we cap it at 5 venues for event inquiry, if there are 3 responses that come within the first 20 minutes, if the 4th comes in and the 4th is like the ideal space, like fits their aesthetic requirements and the capacity of the location is like spot on, if it's even like an hour or 2 after those first 3 and they're off to the races and discussing, the 4th won't even get a look. So, and I read some statistic recently that 70 to 80% of brides, even for this applies to social events as well, which is not really our specialization, but nonetheless, even for brides, the trend is to choose the venue that's most responsive. So increasingly, I think, whether it's this move to millennials and like people, wanting everything on demand and instantaneously, it's this, shorter lead times, it's getting responses as quickly as possible, and they don't want to do the work. It's paradox of choice. If they go down the Google path, they'll be there forever, like just calling places, and it's too much work for them. So what can they get quickly, efficiently, and move on with their lives?
So how have you inspired your staff to embody that concept of responsiveness?
I think we are our customers. So, my co-founding team, Dan used to be a corporate litigator. I came from finance, and while we had these sort of buttoned up corporate jobs, we got tasked planning a lot of corporate events as corporate event neophytes. Like we didn't know anything about event planning. We didn't know anything about how to budget. The one thing we didn't have on our side was time, and I think we got really frustrated by the opacity of the whole process and pricing and just not knowing kind of where to go. And then you go down the Google rabbit hole and you're like, you could be there for weeks. And places could take weeks to get back to you. And your boss doesn't care. When you're in a corporate event planning mode, like your boss, you can't just be like, well, I don't have answers for you yet. It's like, well, I want a spreadsheet with 10 options. What's it gonna cost me? What's the best place? Why do you think that? Have you toured these places? So efficiency was key, and getting that information really quickly seemed to be something that we suffered with, and so we created this product based on that experience. Okay.
What about you, Anne?
We had an event inquiry come from a technology company that's a household name. they were doing a HR recruiting event, and they had virtual reality machines that they needed, or that was in the description, that they wanted stationed around the room. I mean, I thought that was pretty interesting. The craziest I've never seen. From the technology side, I just think, it's moving, so I mean, like Jacqueline said, everyone can read about this. But with our technology, certainly there's applications with machine learning and having it get smarter and smarter with sort of every event that you do, and automating that process. So gone are the days of just simple algorithms where you match people based on price and things. So I think automation, getting with that in terms of response time, getting those responses to people faster. But I think in tandem with that, there is also this desire to connect with humans and to have like a voice. So it's like the technology, the expectation is it's got to be fast, it's got to be immediate, but how do I vet that? And I think for that reason, platforms like mine work in tandem with on the ground folks like Jacqueline and others that can kind of be that voice to sort of vet those options, because people do want that sort of just stamp of approval from like a person versus just getting everything immediately. But the expectation on the tech side then is that it's better than immediate. I'm not going to wait around. So it's sort of like this twofold thing, but I think they complement one another.
That's great. I mean, and the technologies, there's a lot to be said for the technologies that are. Thank you. Yeah.
I think in terms of like data collection, just like knowing, today we try so hard to like collect information. I think using that to leverage your event ROI. So where should you be spending funds? What were people's experiences as they left? Whether it's like sending a survey afterwards or whatnot. Trying to make sure that that's really maximized, because it's not always about spending a lot of money. As we've seen on our platform, there are amazing events that are happening with normal budgets. But being really sort of thoughtful about where you're putting your effort and time.
So how deep do the analytics go, and how deep will they go?
So as we're an early stage startup, so this iteration of the product launched in January. So right now we have a pretty simple algorithmic matching system that's coupled with human intervention. There are obviously tons of applications of artificial intelligence and certainly machine learning in the next few months that we want to add to this to make it smarter. The questionnaire itself is also pretty static, but we require all of those fields to be filled out, which is sometimes an impediment for the casual shopper, which is by design. So you actually have to fill out details about like what you're looking for, because we wanted to mimic the process of like what we did when we were asking people, when we were venue sourcing for people, and we would ask them, if someone's planning an all-day conference, my questions will naturally be very different than if someone is planning just a cocktail reception for a bunch of executives. So we want that form to mimic that process as much as possible, and obviously we need technology to do that. But right now it's pretty static. But given that we require all these minute details to be filled out, people have been very forthcoming. So they do fill out a lot of details, and we take into account everything from like the basics, like you mentioned, location, capacity, but also aesthetic preferences. Eventually we'll have like photo surveys, so people can click to spaces that they're more drawn to, or other sort of qualitative factors. We're changing every day. Like I feel like every day there's something new with the site that we're building or launching. So all to say, what it is now is not what it will be in 2 or 3 months, or certainly 12 months. But we're getting smarter. On the back end, it's a combination of human and technology right now.
That's very cool. And do you offer like pricing, like the last 5 quotes were within this range of price and that kind of thing?
So right now, our platform doesn't actually involve any invoicing software. So venues are free to, the first message, they usually go through the platform, and thereafter they're free to sort of use whatever, email or whatever, and they might go off the platform. So we don't have extensive data on the quotes or the prices, but in our discussions, we have almost 150 venues now on the platform. We understand that there's seasonality and nuances to their pricing. So we're generally able to see, we have like a really easy way for venues to reject leads. So rather than spending time, I'm so sorry, Sarah, like thank you so much for reaching out. Like unfortunately we can't accommodate your request. For us, it's like you just click no and you give a reason from a drop down. So that's provided us ample data to be like, okay, here's where like the comps are for a given venue. So we have a strong sense of like, if you're looking for a co-working space or if you're looking for a hotel, like where's everyone else pricing and where are they missing out? Like, we've had newer venues come to us and say, our pricing really starts at like 175 plus, don't show me anything below. But we often sort of cajole them into saying, you're missing out on a lot of great opportunities. There's a lot of corporate events where maybe the initial budget, we can always add on as we know. isn't starting at 175 plus, maybe it's 150, 135. So we are collecting all that data, and the eventual goal is to give more information to venues, because I think that's totally missing on the venue and vendor side of the market. You don't know what business you're missing out on. So giving your average response time, tracking where your comps are responding, what's their average response time, what's their win rate versus yours. No one knows that today. Like, people are just kind of operating in the dark and saying we have to respond quickly, and we think we're winning enough business, but I have no idea what the venue next door is doing. So, or what the florist next door is doing, or what the caterer next door is doing. And so by giving that transparency, even though we're not saying, okay, your direct competitor is pricing here, just showing comps. Like, I think that already hopefully provides some more price transparency to the industry generally, because then you know kind of where you stand relative to your peers and the rest of the market.
And I
All
think the
right,
flip side
I just want to interrupt because, I mean, our panelists are going to stick around after the panel, so certainly ask your questions directly to them and have that conversation. I want to thank everybody for participating in the audience and our panelists, so thank you, a round of applause. We've covered a lot of ground, so think of one thing that you're going to take away from this and share that with one of your neighbors. Make sure that you continue networking and sharing your thoughts after this event with your colleagues. So again, thank you so much, panelists. Thank you everybody for coming. Really appreciate it. Thanks.